All right, everyone. Today we have a report from the Philippines. Duterte apparently was talking about wanting to drill oil in some of the islands that it claims. This general region, the Spratly Islands and some associated rocks in the ocean, they're claimed variously and at various levels for various purposes by China, South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Taiwan, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei. So it's a little bit of a complicated situation. Now, the sort of world organizations, generally speaking, have been divided on who's actually technically owns them. They generally agree, though, that China is not that specific party. It seems to be, with them, it's basically Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam that are actually vying for control of most of them, with some relegated to Japan. But that being said, the main military force in the region, as far as its capabilities, is China, which of course causes problems. That's why Big Buddy the U.S. is involved in the whole situation and sort of drives through the area with a battleship or something once in a while, sends an aircraft carrier through them just to say, well, we can. You can claim them all you want. We don't recognize the claim, and you're not going to attack us, so we're going to keep sailing around. China has fortified some of these islands. I believe the Philippines currently are occupying several of them as well. But what happened is when he was suggesting, well, there's oil there, we're going to drill it out and use it. China apparently threatened war with the Philippines if they did that. And hearing Duterte's reaction, it's like pure Duterte. He says, oh, if it was up to me, we'd go to war anyway. But, they just destroy everything. China would come in and kill us all, basically. But I don't care. I can't think of a more stereotypically Duterte line than I wouldn't care. It's sort of a little bit of a cop-out, because he's saying, well, it's not up to me. If it was, we'd just go to war anyway, and, we'd massacre them, they'd massacre us, we'd all be killed. At least we'd have our pride and honor. This is the same dude who threatened to eat the liver of ISIS members and threatened to invade one of these islands that's being held by some Islamic rebels, actually, as sort of a stronghold in the region. So, I think when we talk about sort of the strongman, charismatic style of leadership we get from some people, Trump included, a lot of people, if they're more in the globalist status quo, they think, oh, they're not playing with a full deck, they're fucking crazy. In reality, it's all posturing. It's a way to sort of drum up support for your own platform with Duterte, or with Trump, honestly. Drum up support with your own supporters, get them sort of fired up, save face, deflect off of the issue, and not really admit, well, there's not that much we can do about it. Now, if the Philippines were to just, in the middle of the night, they bring a bunch of soldiers to one of these islands, and then they say, okay, it's ours now, we're claiming it, nobody's going to fire upon us because, we're West aligned and the U.S. will back us up, we will drill this oil. What it would set up is a massive conflict, not really between China and the Philippines so much as China and all of its neighbors plus the U.S. Because everyone wants a slice of the pie. What we should be doing is trying to broker some sort of deal whereby all these countries are at least marginally satisfied. Everyone has a few islands that are a little closer to them than to the others. Give China a couple of these islands. They've already fortified a few of them. What the fuck are we going to do about it? But a deal in which the waters around them would still be navigable by the entire world would be preferable. That is, they would have sort of ease of access, a right of way to go to and from the respective islands that they're making use of for one source or another. Japan wants minerals from some of them. The Philippines want oil. Vietnam wants an island or two as a source of national pride, saying, yes, we can man these. And then China, of course, wants some for strategic purposes. But there are a lot of islands there. Why don't we just sort of oversee carving them up? Instead of every party trying to claim most or all of the islands for themselves, why wouldn't we do something like that? I mean, it would be a good symbol of friendship in the area and probably diffuse much of the problematic nature of the situation if that were to occur. Instead, you have all these different countries wanting, basically every slice of the pie to themselves, more or less. However, as far as the more historical basis of the territorial claims, really it's up to Japan, the Philippines, and Vietnam, because they're the only countries that appear to have a historical basis for claiming any of these islands. If China gets anything, and they've already grabbed it up because they can, because Obama didn't do anything about it at the time, it's because of other people's lack of resolve to stop them from doing so. The problem is, China will grab all of these islands up and literally force everybody else off of them if there's no further involvement. And that would be a problem. It's not a problem so much with, oh, China will fortify them and we won't be able to access the entire South China Sea from the U.S. standpoint, because, I mean, are the Chinese actually going to attack us if we do go into that area? It's exceptionally unlikely. They know better. But as far as these other countries go, what it could do is dissolve our relationship with them if it looks like we're not willing to stand up diplomatically to China and back up our allies within the region. Vietnam now included, by the way. Vietnam has close ties to China, but it's been a deteriorating situation for some time. They have a military alliance now with Australia. They have a trade deal now with the United States, specific to not like TPP, but a specific trade deal. They're growing closer and closer to the West as China becomes more powerful, because I think they're more worried about a large military like China going imperialist mode and gobbling things up that happens to share a land border with them, be in that area, than they are the potentially imperialist ambitions of the U.S., because the U.S. is on the other side of the ocean, guarantees these other countries. Vietnam looks at them, sees, well, you know, nobody's invading Japan, nobody's attacking South Korea, nobody's screwing around in Taiwan. Maybe it makes more sense to hedge our bets with the West. I think India increasingly is likely, especially with Trump in office, India is likely to swing to the West, because Trump, unlike Obama, is capable of getting along fully with Modi, which would be valuable to both India and the U.S. All that investment into India, if it's more Western aligned, more guaranteed in its stability long term, would be a massive boom for India. It could involve weapons sales too, as far as India, of course, they're getting better trade status, and someone who probably wants to buy more consumer goods there than from China. China now, because of its middle-class growth, is exporting its labor to East Africa and places like that. They can't even produce goods cheaply enough anymore to export without artificially devaluing their currency and all of these other things. And then they have this diplomatic crisis. India is not involved. But India and China are involved in problems over a small disputed land area between them in the north end of India, border with China, southwest China. As well as China came out not that long ago, warned India, saying, well, we've got a string of pearls. That's the first problem. They want to control the Indian Ocean too, I think. Then they said, oh, well, India can't act like the Indian Ocean is its backyard. It's like the Chinese say, well, it's the South China Sea, therefore China. Well, it's the Indian Ocean, therefore India. By that same token, India does have the capability, by the way, to actually guard that. It's the only country within the region that's technically capable of standing on its own toe-to-toe with China. They've got nuclear weapons, huge manpower, large economy, growing military presence in the region. Probably the only other country that really can. India could become a leader within the region with some basic reforms put into place. Honestly, I think India is a great investment for the future for people who want to get rich. I'm sure that they're already keeping an eye on it. Brazil was, until a couple of years ago. Now it's sort of flatlined. BRICS is sort of problematic anyway. You have problems in South Africa with the rise of communists there that want to kill all the white people and want white genocide, quite literally. Brazil has its problems. They don't apparently have any party that represents people. India and China squabble constantly, and Russia's in a recession. So BRICS isn't the strongest thing that ever existed. All you need now is for China to cool down further and BRICS falls apart. As far as the Philippines go, yeah, they have a legit claim to some of these islands, but I don't think Duterte's nuts enough to actually attempt to fight the Chinese. It would be a bloodbath. The Philippines would be completely depopulated, and China would end up probably taking over the region. Now, that wouldn't be great, and I'm sure Trump will lean on him too and try to do something diplomatically. It'll involve the Japanese, because they have a couple islands they want. It'll involve Vietnam and Malaysia. It would probably involve Taiwan. I think Taiwan would love to have one of them just to spite the Chinese, honestly, because they still consider themselves, technically, to be the legitimate governing authority of all of mainland China, too, and vice versa. So you got a problem there, but Duterte's reaction is probably the funniest takeaway. Oh yeah, I wish we could go to war with them, but then the Chinese would come and kill everybody. Essentially, it's hilarious to hear somebody talk like that. Oh yeah, they'd butcher tens of millions of people. But if it was up to me, we'd let them do that anyway, because we'd be killing them too. That's about all. Peace out.